The world of economics is a fascinating one. It's a realm where numbers dance and policies can make or break nations. But amidst this complex system, the unexpected happens. One such anomaly is stagflation, a mix of stagnation and high inflation. Prices soar. Unemployment stays high, growth halts. This phenomenon has puzzled economists for decades. Imagine an economy caught in a three-way tug-of-war. One force pulls prices upward, another drags economic growth downward, and the third keeps unemployment stubbornly high. This is stagflation, high inflation, economic decline, and high unemployment. Economies, like roller coasters, experience periods of ups and downs. These fluctuations in economic activity are known as the business cycle. The business cycle typically consists of four phases: expansion, peak, recession, and trough. Expansion is a period of economic growth characterized by increasing employment, production, and consumer spending. The peak is the highest point of economic activity in a business cycle. Recession, on the other hand, is a period of economic decline, typically defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. During a recession, businesses contract, unemployment rises, and economic output falls. The trough marks the lowest point of economic activity in a business cycle. Understanding the business cycle is crucial for policymakers. It helps them anticipate economic downturns and implement policies to mitigate their impact. Classical economics, a school of thought that emerged in the 18th century, emphasizes the self-regulating nature of markets. Classical economists believe that the invisible hand of market forces, driven by supply and demand, will naturally lead to economic equilibrium. Key tenets of classical economics include flexible prices and wages, Say's law, and minimal government intervention. Flexible prices and wages allow markets to adjust to changes in supply and demand, ensuring that resources are allocated efficiently. Say's law, simply put, states that supply creates its own demand, implying that production is the key to economic prosperity. However, critics argue that classical economics fails to account for market imperfections such as monopolies, externalities, and information asymmetry. They also point to the Great Depression as evidence that markets do not always self-correct and that government intervention is sometimes necessary to stabilize the economy. Section 5, the circular flow, a dance of demand and supply. Imagine an economy as a continuous loop where households and firms interact, exchanging goods, services, and money. This is the essence of the circular flow model. Households, the owners of factors of production, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, supply these factors to firms in exchange for income. Firms, in turn, use these factors to produce goods and services, which they sell back to households in the product market. An aggregate demand represents the total demand for goods and services in an economy at a given price level. Aggregate supply, on the other hand, represents the total quantity of goods and services that firms are willing and able to supply at a given price level. Shifts in aggregate demand or supply can lead to changes in the overall price level and output in the economy. For instance, an increase in aggregate demand, perhaps due to increased government spending, can lead to economic growth and inflation. Conversely, a decrease in aggregate supply, perhaps due to a supply chain disruption, can lead to economic contraction and higher prices. Section 6, Fiscal Policy, Government Spending and Taxation in Action. Governments play a crucial role in shaping the economic landscape. One of their primary tools is fiscal policy, which involves adjusting government spending and tax rates to influence economic activity. When the economy is sluggish, governments can use expansionary fiscal policy, increasing government spending or cutting taxes to stimulate demand and boost economic growth. This injection of money into the economy can encourage businesses to invest, hire more workers, and increase production. Conversely, when the economy is overheating, governments can use contractionary fiscal policy, decreasing government spending or raising taxes, to curb inflation. This can help to cool down the economy and prevent it from spiraling into hyperinflation. For example, during the Great Recession of 2008, many governments around the world implemented expansionary fiscal policies, such as infrastructure spending programs and tax cuts, to stimulate their economies. Section 7, Monetary Policy, the power of the money supply. Central banks, such as the Federal Reserve in the United States, wield considerable power over the economy through monetary policy. Monetary policy involves managing the money supply and interest rates to influence economic activity. When the economy is sluggish, central banks can use expansionary monetary policy, lowering interest rates or increasing the money supply to make borrowing cheaper and encourage spending and investment. This can help to stimulate demand and boost economic growth. Conversely, when the economy is overheating, central banks can use contractionary monetary policy, raising interest rates or decreasing the money supply to make borrowing more expensive and curb inflation. This can help to cool down the economy and prevent it from spiraling out of control. For instance, the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates to near zero and implemented quantitative easing programs during the 2008 financial crisis to provide liquidity to the financial system and stimulate the economy. Section 8, Supply-side economics, unleashing productivity. While fiscal and monetary policies focus on managing demand, supply-side economics emphasizes the importance of increasing production capacity to achieve long-term economic growth. Proponents of supply-side economics argue that reducing taxes and regulations, particularly on businesses and investors, can incentivize investment, innovation, and job creation. They believe that these measures can unleash productivity, leading to a larger economic pie for everyone. Critics of supply-side economics argue that it primarily benefits the wealthy and can exacerbate income inequality. They also contend that it can lead to budget deficits and that its impact on economic growth is debatable. Section 9, the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression, a tale of two extremes. The 20th century witnessed periods of both remarkable economic prosperity and devastating economic hardship. The Roaring Twenties, a decade of unprecedented economic growth and social change, exemplified the former. Fueled by technological advancements, mass production, and a burgeoning consumer culture, the American economy soared. However, the exuberance of the Roaring Twenties came to a crashing halt with the Great Depression, the worst economic downturn in modern history. Triggered by a stock market crash, the Great Depression plunged the world into a prolonged period of economic hardship. The Great Depression exposed the limitations of classical economics and highlighted the need for government intervention in times of economic crisis. It led to the development of Keynesian economics, which advocates for active government intervention to manage aggregate demand and stabilize the economy. Section 10, from World War II to the 1970s booms, busts and stagflation. World War II brought an end to the Great Depression as government spending on the war effort stimulated economies worldwide. The post-war period ushered in an era of unprecedented economic growth and prosperity, particularly in the United States. However, the 1970s brought about a new economic challenge, stagflation, triggered by a combination of factors including oil price shocks, rising inflation, and slowing economic growth. Stagflation confounded economists and policymakers alike. The 1970s stagflation marked a turning point in economic thinking, challenging the prevailing Keynesian orthodoxy and leading to the rise of alternative schools of thought such as monetarism and supply-side economics. Section 11, the 1980s to today, a period of growth bubbles and recessions. The 1980s ushered in an era of economic liberalization and globalization. Under the leadership of President Ronald Reagan in the United States and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher in the United Kingdom, supply-side economic policies such as tax cuts and deregulation were implemented, leading to a period of economic growth. However, the late 1990s witnessed the dot-com bubble, fueled by speculative investments in internet companies. The bubble eventually burst, leading to a recession. The early 2000s saw a recovery, but it was followed by the 2008 financial crisis, triggered by a housing bubble and a subprime mortgage crisis. The global financial crisis led to the worst recession since the Great Depression, prompting governments around the world to implement massive fiscal and monetary stimulus measures to prevent a global economic meltdown. The global economy has since recovered, but challenges remain, including rising inequality, climate change, and geopolitical instability.